It had been almost 30 years since Henry had been inside the post office, and every single year showed on the aging face of this once vibrant building. He remembered the summer days spent dodging the cracks in the pathway, his hand clutched around his grandfather's, marvelling at the opalescent beetles that flitted between the bushes around the post office. Those beetles that seemed to so bravely fly out to greet him and his grandfather on their regular visits to buy more stamps. Henry never could understand how his grandfather managed to run out of stamps so quickly. As Henry mounted the sloping steps of the post office, he looked down into the bushes, hoping to see some remnants of those beetles. But none could be found. It seemed that those beetles had moved on in the years since his last visit. It seemed like most of the town had moved on with them. Henry tried to look through the window set in the door, but was unable to see past the build-up of dirt and grime that covered it.
Mr. Llwellyn would never have accepted this.
Henry's thoughts returned to the old man who ran the post office in his childhood. Mr. Llwellyn, the ancient wizard who stood guard over the packages and letters of the people of this town, who always peered at Henry from over the top of his wire-rimmed spectacles with wizened eyes that sparkled with mischievousness and secrets.
He has probably moved on as well.
Henry shook his head of this morbid thought and pushed on the door, preparing himself for the heat and decay that surely lay beyond. Cool air washed over him, carrying specks of sunlit dust and the scent of parchment and brown paper. Nothing had changed. The post boxes still seemed to tower over him, their dark varnished wood and polished brass handles losing none of their luster. The counter at the far end was still a jumble of hand-wrapped packages, each bearing names like Buenos Aires, Reykjavik, Jordan, and amongst them all, standing tall and slender in his collared shirt and waistcoat,
Master Henry! How nice of you to come visit! Come to pick up some more stamps for your grandfather?
Feelings of relief and wonder cascaded over Henry as he took off excitedly down the corridor. He was unable to hide the childlike excitement to see his old friend again, and the more he gave in to those feelings, the more that his memories of the decades between their last meeting seemed to fade. His footsteps grew lighter and lighter upon the hardwood floors, and by the time he reached the counter, his clothes seemed to hang off him comically, like a child dressing up in his grandfather's suit. He reached up for the edge of the counter and pulled himself onto tiptoes so that he could look into the wizard's electric blue eyes.
Hello, Mr. Llwellyn. No stamps for me today, sir. I'm just looking to pick up my grandpa's mail, please.
Yes, I think I have some letters for him around here somewhere. Let me go check out the back. Can I trust you to look after the packages and the post boxes while I'm gone?
Oh, yes, Mr. Llwellyn, sir. You can trust me.
Yes, I rather suspect I can. I'll be back in a moment. You call out to me if you need help with anything.
Henry stood alone in his oversized suit, marvelling at the rows of post boxes that stood before him. He had been told by aunts and uncles and teachers that they just held letters. But why would letters need such beautiful boxes to hold them? And why would someone like Mr. Llwellyn, who radiated with energy and secrets, dedicate his life to them?
Mr. Llwellyn, there's something wrong with one of the... Mr. Llwellyn, the Beatles are back, sir!
As the many treasures of the post boxes rained down around him, Henry wished only that his grandfather could have been here to see it. He shut his eyes, listened to the beating of the beetle's wings, and imagined the feel of his grandfather's hand in his one more time.
Here we are, Master Henry. These should be the last of your grandfather's letters.
Thank you, Mr. Llwellyn.
Is there anything else that I can do for you today?
No, I don't think so.
Well, before I let you go, let me give you one last thing.
What's this?
It is the last stamp for your grandfather's collection. He was so very close to finishing it.
He never told me that he collected stamps.
He used to come by stamps every week. Did you think he was sending that many letters?
I used to think a lot of crazy things when I was a kid. I used to think this place was magical.
Well, I'm sure it seemed that way. What could be more magical than getting to spend time with your grandfather?
Yeah, I guess you're right.
I hope to see you again one day, Master Henry.
You too, Mr. Llwellyn.
The two men smiled at one another and parted ways. Henry striding down the corridor of the post office for the first time as an adult. He pushed open the front door and bounced down the stairs, turning his thoughts to all the tasks that remained in the settling of his grandfather's will and estate. As he reached the bottom of the stairs, he opened his hand and looked at the gift from Mr. Llwellyn for the first time. A stamp with a familiar face staring back at him. A man peering over the edge of his wire-rimmed spectacles, wizened eyes sparkling with mischievousness and secrets. Henry chuckled to himself, took one last look at the post office, and began the walk back to his grandfather's house, dodging the cracks in the pathway as he went.